So today we are now going to discuss about loops. Now what are loops exactly as a concept, right? So basically think of this. Suppose I told you that in JavaScript you have to show me all the numbers between 1 to 5, right? And you can say console.log 1, and then you can console.log 2 and so on, right? You can technically type in this, right? And then if I reload this, I go to inspect console, I see 1 2 3 4 5, but this was a tedious affair, right? You have to write 5 lines to say I want to show 1 to 5. So technically this is the same statement, and the only thing that is changing is the number, right? So here's 1, there's 2, there's 3. Can you say, like, okay, if I put one variable here which changes from 1 to 5, can you do that? So for instance, we are going to discuss something called a for loop, right? And I'm going to say for let I equals 1 and I less than equals to 5 and I plus plus, right? I want to print console.log I, right? Now if I save this, I still get 1 to 5. What if I say, like, I want to say the number is comma I, right? Now it says the number is 1 2 3 4 and 5, and you can do a lot more things inside it, but the basic logic is this: I is a variable that starts from 1, right? So it starts from 1, then it executes this line, which is console.log the number is I, so it says the number is 1. Then after this entire thing is complete, I increments by 1, so I becomes I is equal to I plus 1, or I is equal to I plus 1, right? So I was 1, now it became 2, and then the next iteration happens and the number is 2. Then it increments to 3 and the same happens, and it happens until this condition is met, right? So I is equal to I plus 1. Then does I meet loop condition? If yes, execute block code, right? So the moment I is equal to I plus 1 is 6, right, it doesn't match the condition anymore, and it throws out as it doesn't work, right? What if I write something like console.log I, right? I will put this outside of the loop. I'll say outside loop comma I, right? So basically what we are saying is, until the loop runs until I is less than equal to 5, right? And the moment the number the inside code says the number is 5, then what happens, right? Because we are saying that the moment it hits 5, it should run increment by 1, check the condition. If the condition is not met, then it comes to this line, right? So if I reload this, uncaught error, I is not defined. Oh, okay. So let's do this because we don't have I outside. Let's say let I equals 1, right? Now, yeah. So as you can see, so I was initialized as 1, then it runs till I is less than equal to 5. So 1 2 3 4 5. It runs the last time, then it increments the value to 6, so I becomes 6, but then 6 is not less than equal to 5, right? So this statement doesn't work anymore. It goes out of the loop and it runs this, right? Console.log outside loop I, which is 6, right? So the counter goes on for one more time and then it throws this, it gets out of the loop and it shows our outside loop statement, right? So this only executes after loop is finished at I equals 6 and I is not less than or equal to 5, right? So yeah, that's the idea of for loops, and you can kind of do a lot more with it. So for instance, if I do something like for let's say we'll do a count equals 0, and I am going to say for I have to declare it, right? So I'll say let count equals 0 for count equals 0, count less than 5, and count plus plus, right? And then I'm gonna say um, let's say we are gonna say let I equals 0, and here I am basically doing a nested loop, so a loop within a loop, and I'm going to say for I equals 0 and I less than equal to count I plus plus, right? Console dot log count, right? So if you look at this, what we are saying that count is initialized as 0, so this loop starts, right? It says let I equal 0, so I is 0 and I is less than equal to 0, right? So it will run once and it will show 1 0, right? The next time our count increments by 1, so uh, count is now 1, so 1 is less than 5, and now it is checking I is equal to 0 and I less than equal to count, which is I less than equal to 1, right? So if I save this and I print this, so we should technically see a 0 and then we should see 1 1, I think, and then we should see 2 2 2 or something like that. 2 2 1 3 2 3 4. Why, what happened? 0 1 2 3 4, right? Let's see what happened here. We are saying, so initially let's do this way. We are saying count is 0 and then we are saying I is 0, then we are saying I less than equal to 0, which means one time, because 0 is less than equal to 0. Output is 0, right? Which is basically our count. Then I becomes 1, then inside loop doesn't run because it doesn't match the condition. Then we increase our count becomes 1, 1 is less than equal to 5, so that runs. I is equal to 0 again, and then we are saying I less than equal to 1, which means 2 times, right? Because 0 and then 1, right? And then we are trying to print count. So it's 2 it's 2 times 1, right? uh, yeah, it's 2 times 1. So we are seeing 2 1 3 1. What if I write num count? Oh, it's not showing the let's say we say loop I num count, right? So yeah, so we are seeing this loop 0 num 0 loop 0 num 1, right? And then we are saying loop 1 num 1 loop 0 num 2 loop. Correct. So yeah, that's what we saw, right? So we are saying count is 0, I is 0, then output is 0, which is here. Then I is reset to 0, count is reset to 1. So 0, 1. Then I increases by 1 and num increases, num stays the same, which is 1, 1. Then I becomes 0 again. And then we have to count till from 0 to 2, which is 3 times. So 0, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2. So these are 3 times. Then we'll have a set of 4. So 0, 3, 1, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3, right? And that's how it works, right? But the idea of it is the same, right? You can technically, visualize it as long as you see it like this. So at first count is 0, I is 0, I less than equals to 0, which means one time, basically when I is 0 and count is 0, right? Output is 0 count and 0 I, right? I will just put it in the order that we have 0 I and 0 count, right? Then I becomes 1 and inside loop ends because 1 is not less than equal to count, right? Which is at the time is 0, right? Now count becomes 1, right? And then I is reset. So I is reset to 0, right? I has to run when less than equal to 1, which is your count, right? Because count has become 1 now, right? And so it will run 2 times. When it runs 2 times because when I is 0 and I is 1, right? So now the first time it runs, it says I is 0 and count is 1. Then it runs again and it says I is 1 and count is 1, right? Then I becomes 2 and then inside loop ends again, right? Now what happens once the inside loop has ended? Our count increases again. So count becomes 2. It was 1 before, now it is 2, right? I is equal to 0, which is again a reset. Then I has to run when less than equal to 2. Sorry, I have to add a comment here. So when I is less than equal to 2, because your count has become 2, right? Which means it runs 3 times now, which is when I is 0, 1 or 2, right? So our output now is I 0, count 2, I 1, count 2, I 2, count 2. Then again I becomes 3, doesn't match the condition, inside loop ends, and then our count becomes 3, I is reset to 0, right? And then again we will go for showcasing uh, a loop 4 times again. So this is the concept of nested loops. So it works great when you kind of understand what you want to repeat again multiple times, and then figuring out a loop to repeat that particular aspect, right? For in this case, for example, I was trying to repeat the fact that, hey, I want a loop that runs another loop multiple times, right, for a set amount of times, right? And within that loop I will have a statement that can fetch a value from the first loop statement and take a value from the second loop statement and showcase both of them. And this the whole idea was to kind of get you into the understanding that, hey, like you need to understand increments and conditions really well when you are doing loops like this, because if your count is a little off, you can kind of miss the condition and end up having a unlimited loop, right? So for instance, for instance, you can have something like for count uh, equals to 0 and count greater than 0, right? And count plus plus, right? And you can say console.log count. Technically this should hang the computer, I guess, because this is basically saying that from 0 to infinity, doesn't matter if the count increases, as long as it is greater than equal to 0, it should show the number, right? So as you can see, I've reached already 95,000. So yeah, I'll just stop this because I don't want to hang the computer quite yet. So yeah, that's the whole idea of loops. So you have to be very careful about these two statements. First is when the loop should end, which is the condition, or when the loop should keep running. And second is the increment, because if you don't have an increment, it basically means the conditional value never changes, and so the loop will continue running always, right? So yeah, that's the whole idea for loops. I think there are a few other loop statements that we will discuss and what is the difference between them in the upcoming videos.